I'm sure you've heard it. The thoughts you think create your reality. Today, we're going to dive deep into how do you rewrite that script to build a life that you actually love. So let's get started. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I have Lizzy Rich with us. So Lizzy Rich is a life coach and a hypnotherapist. So we are talking all about the power of our thoughts on today's call. Welcome, Lizzy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with your audience and your energy. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. We were just chatting. We're like, well, let's just see where exactly this conversation is going to go, right? Where do our thoughts want to lead us? Now, one of the other topics we touched a little bit on, just to ground people, was NLP and an NLP focus. Can you talk a little bit about what like NLP therapy is? Because I think that gives us a really good framework for what we want to get into today.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of definitions for NLP, but if we look at it, NLP, if you've never heard of it before, it's neuro-linguistic programming. So we're looking at our nervous system, which is the body. A lot of people will say the unconscious mind is the body. And then linguistic. What is the language, right? We're always running narratives in our mind. So we're making things mean something. We can't help but look and observe life and filter it, right? We're going to judge it as right or wrong, good, bad, for me, not for me. And it's a way that we experience life. And so it's important for us to be able to have awareness around what's the language internally and then also externally. What are we saying? And so when we're looking at our nervous system and the language, it's shaping how we're experiencing life, right? So I know a lot of your audience might be first time divorced, maybe even second time. And it's so important for all of you guys to really take inventory of how you're making it mean something about you, about them, about your kids, about life, about love. And so NLP just helps us use language to have you program and run a script and a dialect inside that is going to feel good and begin to create a reality that internally will begin to reflect externally.
Yeah. And that's the coolest part. You guys can rewrite the script at any time. I know for me, my mind was really running the show. The not helpful thoughts were running the show. And it wasn't until I read a book, actually, I started it, I didn't finish it, Untethered Soul. So I got it. I was like, I don't know, this book is calling to me. Okay, I started it. I think I literally got 10 pages in. Maybe this is my calling to finish the book. But in there, the author talked about the fact that the thoughts we hear are not actually us. Because if it was us, we'd be talking from first person. And it's not, right? Like, think about the thoughts in your head. In mine were, you're never going to be happy. You are not good enough to be a wife. You did all this stuff, right? It was a lot of fear based in the middle of my separation. I was very, very afraid. And so all those thoughts were really running the show. And my thoughts drove like what I felt confident to do or to not do. And so when I read that paragraph, it changed everything. It kind of was like a big pause button. And I was like, oh, you mean I don't have to believe those things that are running in my head? And they're not even me. They're not even actually me. They're this other protective mechanism from a long, long time ago that was trying to keep us safe by building a lot of fear around, oh, if you do something, it could risk your safety, it could risk your life. And so learning how to write a new story in my head and how to stop all that rambling was really powerful in being able to move forward.
When you look at that past self of you and then where you're at now, what would you say was the biggest differentiator? Like you have that kind of opening in your perspective through reading that. which I love books, but books have changed my life. Now that you're on the through side, what would you say has been like the biggest needle mover?
So one of the things that I really noticed was the biggest difference was that version of me was 100% controlled by fear. And fear showed up in a lot of different ways. I didn't realize that when I was angry, the root of it was fear. And when I was sad, the root of it was fear, right? I thought I was really frustrated. I was really overwhelmed. I was really angry. I'm rather fiery in my temperament. And so the fire was out of control. Nothing was checking the fire anymore. And so everybody irritated me. Everything was getting in my way. The root, again, was fear. And so when I first learned that, I actually learned it in my yoga teacher training, another great book by Judith Hanson Lassiter, who talked about everything is love or fear. And so being able to start to be like, oh, Erica, you hate going out to a new restaurant, not because you don't like the restaurant, because you are afraid that the food's going to make you sick. I was having a lot of digestive issues at that point, right? You sit here and pretend like you don't like, breweries, or you don't like camping, or you don't like all this stuff, but the root of it was always fear. And so I had lost me. So the fear was running the show because I was so desperate almost to be chosen. That's kind of the wrong word, but to have my people. Like I always felt like I never had my people. And now I sit in a place where I have my people because my people is me. And so I love the friends and I love knowing that there's community and there's people that I can go talk to. But if all of that disappeared, I would still love who I became. And that's because I love hanging out with me. And that's really, as I look back, I was such a shell of seeking external safety and security instead of finding it internally.
I freaking love that so much. I feel that that's literally the fact that you vibrate on that frequency is why we connected, because that's totally how I see it as well. And what I love about this work is when you really understand the laws of really just what is, it's literally a law of gravity. It's no different. And that there's laws of fear and there's laws of love and fear are so connected. It's like there's just a thin veil between them. And all my work is around fear and love as well. And I think the greatest thing in the dialogue that we were talking about earlier that's helped me is not to demonize one or the other and to really look at something without judgment and to come with curiosity and observation. I love talking about any of our past versions of ourselves or the things that we have judged or even our exes or whatever the case may be, to see all of it as innocence or ignorance, because it can be one or the other. There's an innocence, you didn't know what you didn't know. And then sometimes there's an ignorance, you know it, but you're still feeding fear rather than love. And that's okay. There's a process for all of it. But that contrast builds our clarity and it strengthens us. And I think both you and I have had a dance with fear and with love that allows us to know that difference. And it's a part of a learning process here. So if that's the case, and if I had a child that was going through the same thing, we would love them unconditionally. So we get to love us the way that we would our kids. And I think that's again so amazing if I ever have a client that has kids, because it's a very easy mirroring. But then also if you don't have kids, it's looking at who's somebody that you really, really do love, even if it's your dog.
And it's such a key piece to understand how you were saying fear and love. And there's a very, very thin veil. You can choose to look at anybody's actions through either of those lenses. And I think that that's where sometimes our mind plays these tricks, right? I think sometimes there's one specific example I remember. I was dating somebody and I have a habit of making a lot of excuses as to why people can't fully show up the way that I think that they should show up. And even in that, it's not an excuse. They're doing the best that they can, and it's not exactly what I need. And so let's part ways instead of try to make them be what I need them to be. But I remember when it was nearing the end of this like 6 months of dating. And at first I was looking at it through love and be like, oh, he's not quite ready, or he's not able to give me the things that I'm looking for in a relationship. We want different things. Nothing wrong with him. He's a great guy, but he can't quite show up the way that I'm looking for in a partner. And at some point, the other switch got flipped, right? I got upset or I was not maintaining my own self-care. So maybe I was tired, maybe I was hungry, like I was run down. And it flips into that fear thing. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, well, how long has he been manipulating me? And maybe none of his stories were true. Nothing had changed. Nothing had changed in the conditions or the interactions or what we were doing. But the story that my mind chose to tell me about it was night and day different. And it flipped, just like that. I stopped and I was like, you know what? Hold on. You're really like demonizing everything he's ever done when how you want to choose to see people is that they are actually trying their best. They are doing their best. It doesn't mean that they're always the right fit, and that you can, with grace and love, choose to move on. Set him free to the right partner and set you free to the right partner. But that story can flip so quickly. And it's really important that we challenge ourselves when it moves into the negative side. Is this really how you want to see it? Like, is this really what the story that you want to continue to build?
Yeah, 100%. And that gives you your power back.
Hmm.
And when you have power, you really do get to create. And for anyone that's like questioning, well, why am I doing that? I feel like I'll have a lot of clients like, why do I do this? Or why am I back here? And I always remind them, number one, you're actually never back where you think you were because you've already learned more from where you were before. So there always is a forward progression. And as you become more aware, sometimes more judgment comes in because you think, I've learned this, I've done this. And I'm like, trust me, it's just, you're in the process, trust it. Like usually you begin judging yourself more and more, and then you keep going, and eventually the time frame begins to get faster where you can go from fear to love. And even what I'll tell people now that I work with is that fear will activate anger and all this frustration. And I'm like, that is love too. We've got to, what if everything was defined as love? Because when we look at that, anger is going to pop in, frustration is going to pop in because there's one thing or two things that are happening. Your needs aren't being met or boundaries are being crossed. And again, it's because of the power that you have within you just went out the window for a moment. And that's, again, that turning point was because we fell asleep to the truth of who we are, which is a conscious choice. But if we're not conscious to the choice, then we go into old default programming, and that's natural. It's like a child learning. And so we get to have that compassion with ourselves in the process, but allow it to be a practice. I love that you did yoga because everything is the practice. And I tell people all the time, look, you're not going to go get six pack abs in the gym over a weekend. You're not going to go study with Tony Robbins for a weekend and change your life and think you never need to do anything again. Like it's a maintenance thing, like flossing your teeth. And when you choose the personal development path and you choose the path of love, it really is a lifestyle, and it's something that is a becoming forever. And that's why now even anger or frustration I see as passion. And I'm like, you guys, it's fuel. It's fuel and it's love calling, right? So everything is love, or it's a calling for love, a cry for love. So it's a calling for love to the needs, a calling for love to the boundaries or to standards or commitments that you fell asleep to or haven't created yet. And that's okay.
That was a really hard lesson for me to learn because at its depth, I was really at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, I've mentioned this. I was sitting on a therapist's couch saying, I don't really understand how to continue to live in this life that is now here. Like it was the bottom. I was so crushed and so upset. And I really felt like, hey, it's easier for a kid to have a parent die than to have parents divorce. And so, like, maybe that's just easier for my son. We're talking bottom, you guys. And so, as I crawled my way back out, as I learned how to catch my thoughts and rewire my thoughts, and I learned to find things every day that did bring me joy, and I rebuilt into a place that was love and abundance. I was so at peace with who I was, and I wanted the best for everybody, and all the judgment was gone, and I was like, whoop, now high as a loving, abundant kite, okay? When I tripped again, and when those old patterns showed up, and the fear crept back in, or the anger crept back in, or the me versus you thinking crept back in, it was really difficult for me because I felt like I'd already mastered this. Like, why did I let it slip? How come I let this go? And so that awareness that it is a practice, it is a muscle that if I used to work out all the time, had a really great back squat. I haven't worked out in a lot of months because life's been busy. Guess what? I cannot walk back in and do another 250-pound back squat. I have to train that muscle back up. And it's the same when it comes to fear and love. We fall off, train the muscle back, go back to those practices.
100%. I love that. I actually use the gym a lot as an example because people get it like in a more tangible way. But I feel like what you just said about your kids, about losing a child or you passing away would almost be easier than a divorced, family situation for a kid. And right there, that's a story that you tell yourself. And we can't really know if that's true or not, but it brought you to a living hell where then most people, when they're stuck in a hell, they go, okay, like, fuck this, I'm out. And they don't want to do life anymore. Or they kind of hit that rock bottom. And like many stories, you go on that hero's journey and then you find yourself again. But some people don't. And so I always do my best to honor people's choices and that they're doing the best that they can with what they have. But as you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's interesting. And I've talked about this before, just more with my friends and I guess clients if it came up. But I come from a divorced family, and my parents divorced when I was about 4 or 5, and I loved it. And then I love sharing that because it wasn't that my parents fought. I literally only remember one time that they kind of started having voices raised, and my dad, I could hear him in the other room, and he's like, Risa, it's my mom's name. He's like, Risa, keep your voice down. I don't want the kids to hear. And I heard all that. And then so, little kids, they pretend like they're sleeping and then they like wake up and they go out there and like, what's going on? Just playing dumb. But one, I really respected my dad that he said that. And when I was younger, I think I judged my mom a little bit more for that. And I've learned over time, it's like, no, she's a woman, she's doing her thing. Like they both have they're both responsible. But I love sharing this because if there's a mom out there that's questioning if this is going to ruin my kids or whatever, like I literally from day one loved it and my experience was great. And my parents were able to have a peaceful divorce, which I think is amazing. And that's not always the case. And I cannot speak for every child, but if I could speak to the fact that, again, question the story that you're telling yourself because you can't determine and you're not in control of your kids' narrative. No matter what you do, your child is their own person. They're going to have their own voice and you get to honor it. And as you learn the skills that help you, we just get to role model it and to teach them to think for themselves. And I think as mothers, we want to protect children. Of course, that's like our nature. But one of the greatest things that you can do is just teach them how to be, how to think, how to feel, how to actually navigate the human experience. And then it empowers them to go out there and live their own story in a way that's great. They lived their life, and it allowed me to really see that and learn that from a very, very young age.
Let's dive into how you really rewire those beliefs because that's a perfect example. So many moms roll in, either they're staying in the marriage because they're afraid of the impact it'll have on their kids, or I'm so worried about how long this is going to impact my kids, or I'm worried that my kids are going to hate me for this, all those things. None of those beliefs serve you. And so now the job is when that thought pops up, when that painful thought shows up, there's an awareness of like, wait a second, this is not helping me. But now what? Now you start the work of rewiring the thoughts. So to your point, they're just laws. They're just laws that we have to learn how to rewire these thoughts. Let's dive into them and show them how they can do it.
Yeah, I would really look at a couple of different routes, right? You can journal it, you can speak it out loud. You could even actually just move it more in a somatic, like in your body experience. And it's really about allowing the truth to be here. So, what are you really feeling? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling frustrated? Like, and allow that part. It's almost like inside out, and you have a little part within you, and you give it the mic. And you say, I really honor that you're here. You have something to share. I want to hear your value. I want to hear what you got to say. Like, here's the mic. And all of a sudden, when you do that, you're allowing yourself to almost be a container and you give the emotion. And I like to think of an emotion as it's energy in motion, right? It's energy in motion. And if we look at the word emotion, it's to emote, to express. So an act of love is going, okay, anger, express. And you can journal that out. Again, you can thrash it out. You can run it out. You can speak it out. Allow yourself to explore different ways of getting to listen to this. But as you're listening, again, like you were saying, we're an observer. And so my offering is that as you express, especially for someone who can connect to either a child that they love or someone who's really important to them, to listen to that expression in a place of not trying to fix it, not trying to change it, Because even moms sometimes, I think, get into the illusion, let me fix them, let me change them, but just holding space and allowing them to have that experience. And then you get to observe it and bring it love and compassion. And I tell clients, like, dialogue with it. So one thing that you can do, let's say, if, for instance, you're going to choose to speak it out, you can sit in a chair and face one way, and you can literally use the term, fear says, or angry says, or frustration says, and you voice that out. I'm really upset about, the fact that they didn't call me back and they said that they would, and this is now like the 10th time, and da 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 da, and like, what the F, and like, you just let it all out. And then you switch over, like literally move so that the unconscious mind, the body, is picking up, okay, there's somebody else in the room. And then you'll say, love says, and you speak to what was just said, and you have a dialogue, or you can journal this out. Love says, well, I hear that that's really important to you, and like, that's not really being met. And from here, what's something that you feel is going to be the next act of love for you? Boom, switch, fear says. And you dialogue back and forth, and you'll feel in your body that there's a neutrality that begins to occur. And it's because that part is being expressed, it's being heard. And then love, that other aspect of you, kind of like the higher self, the container that's holding all of it, is not judging it. And if you are judging, honestly, just allow yourself to keep going. You will find neutrality the same way that a baby that's crying will begin to relax. And in that, you come to a place of, I forgive myself for judging myself for. There's a great phrase that comes from the University of Santa Monica, and it literally is, I forgive myself for judging myself for buying into the misunderstanding that this person has to call me back or has to show up in this way. And then you always follow it with, and the truth is, they don't actually. And the truth is, I was projecting that on them. And the truth is, honestly, it's freaking okay. And then you go into, I forgive myself for judging myself for thinking that I'm off track. And the truth is, I cannot be off track. I forgive myself for judging them for not being good enough. And the truth is, that's the pain of the world. Everyone feels like they're not good enough. And now I'm only adding to the pain. And that's okay, because we're all in this together, right? And so I love that framework from the University of Santa Monica. I forgive myself for judging myself for the situation. I forgive myself for judging myself. I forgive myself for judging the other person. And then coming back to the truth is. So it's like expressing yourself and dialoguing, like loving on yourself. And if you have to, again, dissociate and think of yourself as a child that you love or somebody that you really love, forgive yourself for the judgments and come back to the truth. I think the greatest power statement ever is, the truth is. The truth is. And it's so humbling. And then the third step that I would do is just go, okay, from here, the truth is what? Find action within the truth. And then our job is to go live out in the 3D realm the truth. So it's give space for the emotion, forgive, and then go live the truth. And then you just keep going. And it's a practice that we'll do for the end of time, but it's a very simple and beautiful thing. And that truth begins to gear your focus and internal eye towards narrative that's aligned to a highest self, which is going to be love, compassion, understanding. But within that, it's power and it's truth. And it's you being in a place of, this is what I want, I'm going to go get it.
The biggest lie that fear ever created for me was that dealing with the emotions is going to hurt worse. So you spend a lot of time running. I see people run a lot. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to deal with it. I'll stay busy. I'll stay avoidant. I'll sweep it under the rug. I'll push it down. But the reality is that when you do that first step and you give it space, give it a voice. It doesn't mean you're making it more powerful. You're just no longer avoiding it. And any time we avoid our emotions, think about if you were talking to a partner and you were telling them how you felt and they continued to ignore how you felt, what would you do? You'd talk louder, you'd talk more often, you'd get stronger in what you are fighting to be heard. So give your emotions the space to be heard. And then guess what? They start to go away. They get smaller. I actually do envision it as little like fractured parts of my own self. Or that's the 12-year-old girl of me, because often these stories, these fear-based limiting beliefs come from something that's happened to us a really long time ago. And so when I can look back at, hold space for, why am I always feeling so judged. I like flashback to some graduation party when I was 12 years old and I wore like a dress when I should have worn shorts. And I remember the like judgment and the shame. And I felt so stupid. I felt so stupid that I didn't understand what I was supposed to wear. And now I'm all dressed up and everybody else is all casual and I couldn't hide. And I had to go back and I had to heal that part. And when I healed that part by listening to it and giving it space and then telling that version of me, yeah, that was hard and that sucked and that hurt. And you're okay in that hurt. And guess what? I'm here now. I'm the adult now, and I've got us. I will not ever let you feel that way again. I am here to protect you, right? Doing that process, I love to journal it out. I haven't tried the talking in the chair, but I do verbally process a lot. My one therapist was like, "You don't actually even need a therapist in the room. You just need to talk out loud." She's like, "So if you just want to talk in your own living room, talk it out. You always come to your own solutions." But do that process. And then you might have to repeat it a few times because, again, it's been ignored for a lot of years. But once I realized that my true power was in looking at it instead of running from it, feelings were not something to be avoided or to be ashamed of or to be scared of. They were your true power to live in. Into what you're saying, that last step is like, go live your truth. Don't live in the fake lies that your ego's creating in your mind. Choose what you want to see. Choose how you want to operate in this world and then go be it.
I love that so much. It's such a good example as far as if someone was talking to you and they kept walking away and how you would react, right? Or you would probably peace out too. Like, who knows? But then you disassociate actually from what you feel, and people don't even know what they feel. So I love that. I think that's really, really powerful. And I love how you pointed out that it's almost like, yeah, these different fractals of yourself. How I originally saw it for myself, which I wasn't taught, I just experienced it the way that I experienced it, was that it's puzzle pieces. And then I imagine that, and then I'm a puzzle piece within all of humanity, and we all create this beautiful picture together. And so it's like we're all one. And then I learned it, of course, so many different ways through so many different modalities. And if there's anyone in here, because my past self would listen to these things and think, ah, there's nothing new here. It's all the same thing. And da, 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 da. And I would be searching for something else. But what I've really come to understand is my own inner experiences of truth showed up a certain way. And then in the world, I could see the mirroring of how it occurred to others. And then what I kind of came to the conclusion with years of studying is it's just because it's law. So if there's anyone in here that is still searching, or as you listen to us, you're like, oh, like I feel like I try that, or da 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 da, or I've heard this before, and you're searching for something new, my question to you would be, what if you were to surrender to what is and go, this is the way? Because that's again a narrative. And when you decide, like, I'm just going to live by the laws, then amazing. And look there's people that skydive, and it's not that they're fighting gravity, but they dance with gravity. And so you can dance with laws however you want to. And I think it's just really important that there's an acceptance, because sometimes we'll fight what is, and we can, in a sense, not surrender in a way that makes us weak, but allow ourselves to release and dance into it in our own unique ways and become a voice for truth, because we're all saying kind of the same things. But the more voices we have and the unique expressions, again, our puzzle pieces all begin illuminating in really beautiful ways. And we create this picture of humanity in a way that's free, right? We really do hold the key between heaven and hell. We lock ourselves in or out, and it's a fascinating thing, but I don't see any of it is wrong. I believe everyone's really, truly in a beautiful path. And the contrast is what gives us the free will. And that's
Yeah.
what creates us as creators.
I always love to see a good pattern. One-offs happen all the time, but when you start to see a pattern, you are being given the opportunity to ask yourself if this still serves you. So you can come up with all of the arguments as to why you are valid in what your belief system is. 100%. we talk about the see, do, get model. How you see the world creates what you do, gives you the results that you get. And how you see the world is 100% based on your own experiences, your own paradigm, the glasses that you wear and how you see things. And when you choose to see things a certain way, you see more reasons that that is reinforcing what your beliefs are, which then causes you to do behaviors that only reinforce those beliefs. And then you get the same results over and over. So if you're seeing this pattern, and you're asking yourself, does this serve me anymore? Is this a pattern that I want to continue? At any point, you can choose to step outside of it. There's some momentum going because you've been thinking this pattern for a while. I visualize it as a well-worn path in your brain. Okay. If you're walking through a field and you've walked the same path in the field for 10 years, you can probably walk it in the dark. It's probably beaten down to a dirt path versus the rest of the field is grass. The rest of the field, maybe the grass is taller than you and you can't necessarily see your way through. You have to build a new path. That old one is there and it's going to be there for a really long time, but you can make this choice. So the one question to turn it over, right? Let me see this differently. I'm ready to see this differently. This pattern, I'm tired of being stuck in the same narrative. I don't know what the new path is or how to carve it out or where it needs to go, but I'm ready to start to see things differently. And that little bit of a shift can be all that's needed for your mind to start to open up a new pathway for you to rewire these beliefs that no longer serve you.
Yes, it's the energy of willingness,
Mm-hmm.
because it shift in the frequency will allow the shift in the movement. And so as we shift into willingness, yeah, the frame changed, right? So again, that story did change in the mind. If someone is really powerful in thinking, I know I'm one of those people, is I ask myself, how else can I define this? Because how you define it will be how you experience it. So in order to experience a new experience, you get to redefine something. And I actually really utilize Google, and I Google origins of words all the time because I want to get to the truth of that and kind of meditate on what the word is and really look at, am I cognitively, consciously creating how I want things to be? Because things shift over time, and even words and language changes over time. So you get to go in and feel into literal words on how you are defining them and how you experience them. And then with that, you'll begin to create a new reality. And what's beautiful is every single thing in our world existed in someone's mind first, and then it came to the 3D realm. And it was because the identity within them believed that they could. And that is why we want to constantly question who we are, and not because it's not good enough, but just for the fact that you literally, I feel like if there's a truest I am, it's I am a decision.
Mm.
I am a decision, and you get to decide 24/7 every single second. And there's a crossroads that's always available. And with that willingness energy, you see the crossroad and you go, how else could I define this?
Yeah.
And then no matter what you're up against, that's life is for you or against you based on your definition. And that to me is so fun and so cool because it's just the revelation and mirror of our power.
Because we always have a choice. I know that a lot of times there was a lot of years that I felt like this life was being forced upon me. He cheated. He did these things. He caused these things in my life. But I always had a choice. I had a choice if I wanted to stay or go. I had a choice if I wanted to let that narrative continue to hold me back, right? It was 5 years past and I was talking to a friend how frustrated I was about an opportunity at my job that was not moving forward for me. And I was like, well, this is because I'm a divorced single mom now and he did this to me. This is 5 years ago. He hasn't done anything directly in my life in a really long time. And being able to take that power back, I no longer created a story that he was able to impact my life. It goes back, you guys, to again that veil between fear and love. What do you want? How do you want to see your interactions in 2025? I had to write myself a letter that I wanted to see my interactions with my ex as moving forward. I wanted to see them as having enough space for everybody to get what they wanted. I wanted to look at his text messages and I had to choose to read it with the mindset of love and it's okay. Because it was really easy to snap into fear. It was really easy to snap into anger and limiting beliefs. And so it was a choice. It was a practice. Remember that path in my mind? I had lots of years of pain and heartache and lies and not being able to trust him. And now I had to choose that I was going to trust what he said was actually the truth in the text. Now, partnered with that is healthy boundaries. It didn't mean that I, rose-colored glasses just took his word for whatever it was. It didn't mean that I relied on him to treat me with the same level of respect. I maintained my own boundaries and taking care of myself while I still chose how I wanted to see or read what he was also creating. It's always a choice, you guys, and it is so empowering when you stop giving your power to somebody else to impact your life.
Your ability to challenge yourself, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're challenging the thought, we're questioning it. And the thing that's difficult about it is you have to humble yourself. And the ego loves to be the victim. And look at there are victims in the world in the sense of, yeah, people cross your boundaries, like that's real too. And the way that you again get that power back is that you gain the perspective and your ability to choose the thing that really can never be taken. And something I want to say too is it's so interesting because when I look at my dad went through 2 divorces and fear really pushed him, right? So we'll talk about motivators in NLP. So fear will push you or pleasure will pull you. And sometimes we're in different aspects of our life, and fear is a great motivator. And I use both in my life all the time. The thing is, though, I utilize it as a powerful source rather than something holding me back. It's how I define it. And so I'll look at what will it cost me not to do the thing? What will it cost me to do the thing? It's like kind of a pain perspective, but so I can really get the whole world of it. And then also with something, what would be the pleasure of it? What would be the benefit? What am I going to gain and become through that? And I'm looking at the duality because I believe that there's a law of duality. It's not even that I believe it. To me, it's just what seems to be true. And so I utilize all of it to move forward. And my dad really utilized fear and pain and hurt to his benefit, and I benefited from it. So again, for any parent, you can't mess it up with your kids. They're going to make their own decisions. They're going to filter life through their own minds. But my dad was served papers from my mom's dad. So his father-in-law served him papers to stay away from us, which was so mind-boggling to him. And it didn't make any logical sense. He did nothing, but it was that you had to stay away. And then my mom calls him one day, like, hey, why aren't you here to pick up the kids? He's all, your father's like served me papers that I cannot come near you or the kids. And I don't even think she even really knew about it, but he said he kept that by his bedside for 2 years. And he would look at it every single day, and it was a reminder of who he was going to be, what he was not going to do again, and like all of this stuff. And he used a lot of his guidance and coaching with me from a lot of fear perspective, but it still was wrapped in love where I'm so grateful for him. I'm such a daddy's girl, and he's been the core of my programming. But through his pain and through his fear, from day one, it was really taking care of yourself, making sure that your needs are met. I think that's what's allowed me to be very powerful in relationships pretty much my whole life. And I've been in a marriage now and with my husband for 11 years. It's epic and it continues to grow and get amazing. But I really did learn through so much of my dad's fear and pain. And I think that that's also important. Even though it was fear-based, it moved him in a way that it was helpful. And then all of us will have a point where it's not helpful anymore. And that's usually when the transition back into love occurs. And then you have a different type of freedom. And everyone's going to have their own journey. And I just wanted to say that because there are people that are going to be in that. And I think it's really important to just honor your own place. And again, not to judge it and trust it.
I wish I would say that we do more work when something is enjoyable, but we don't. We do more work when it hurts. Pain is definitely a bigger motivator. We become very desperate to stop the pain versus if you're like, man, life is just a little unhappy. Do you want to do anything and everything to have an amazing life? The pain definitely motivates us faster, but it is to your point. How do you leverage it to get where you want to go? And I love the example of leaving it as a reminder. It didn't happen. If I had not written out what I was committing to in how I wanted to show up, I would have lost my way because I would have forgotten, because it's really easy in the moment to react to what's coming up. And so having that goal, and it really is a goal. How do I want to be in my co-parenting, or how do I want to, maybe you're still married and you're trying to figure out that you want to be done. Okay. Well, then you want to call in clarity by the end of the year, but then you have to do the work to hold yourself accountable and stay focused on where you're trying to go. Check back in. I just ordered it again. It's a moonology journal. It just helps me flow with the moon cycles, which I love because it's a way to track time, you guys. It's just a way to look back at the month. What did I set out to achieve? What did I achieve? What do I want to let go of? What am I rolling forward to the next month? We're always changing and evolving, and it doesn't happen overnight. It happens one little thought, one little belief, one little day at a time. So I want to thank you,
Yeah.
Lizzy, for joining us today. This was super powerful conversation all around the power of your thoughts. I wish you guys an amazing next month of rewiring those beliefs. So grab a journal or sit with yourself, talk it out. Stop running from the fear. If you are married, ask yourself, why am I afraid to leave? What am I really afraid to let go of? It's going to give you some clarity on if you are just afraid to move on or if you really still want to make it work. And if you're divorced and you're still blaming your ex for something that happened a long time ago, take your power back. Stop letting them continue to impact your life. That chapter's done. It's time for you to really take control and start to build what you want. So thank you guys. Until next week, take care of yourself and we'll talk to you soon.
And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.